Hi gentlemen, this is going to be our first video posted on Schoology, so we're going to give this a little test and see if it works. But the idea is, I'm going to put some information here, you can watch it whenever you want rather than have to do it in class. So, we're going to talk first about simple horizontal motion. So, think of an object. Could be a car, it could be a bike, it could be a person, it could be a train. Since I am not very artistic, for me it's going to be a block. So we have a block, and this block is going to move, and I want you to describe that motion. Well, using the English language, we might say it moves fast or it moves slow, but that's qualitative. In science, we're interested usually in quantitative things. Qualitative also, but especially in physics, we like quantitative values. So instead of saying it moves fast, I would like you to say it moves 72 miles per hour. The problem is, what does that mean and how do we come up with it? So, if this object's going to move, it means it's going to go from one point, let's call this point A, to another point, point B. It's going to go from A to B. That's what we call motion. Now, if it gets there quickly, we'll say it's moving fast. If it gets there slowly, we'll say it's moving slow. So there's already this idea of time being a factor. If it's not a lot of time, fast, lots of time, slow. So we know there's something to do with time. Another thing that might matter is, these are just kind of hypothetical points in space. And even though on the board they're very close, in real life they could represent Philadelphia and Los Angeles. So we care about how far apart they are as well, or what we would call a distance. So we care about distance, and we care about time. I'm going to make up values for the sake of this little video. So let's say these are 10 miles apart. The distance is 10 miles. And let's say the time it took to travel that distance was 2 hours. Time is 2 hours. Now, depending on what type of object we're talking about, that might be fast or slow. If you walked 10 miles in 2 hours, you're an extremely fast walker. But if you drove 10 miles in 2 hours, you were probably stuck in traffic. So, again, I don't care about fast or slow. I want to know this other thing, what we're going to call speed. So let's go up here and write speed. So what is speed? Well, let's see. We went 10 miles in 2 hours. Now, that gives you a sense for what speed is or how fast this is moving. But we usually don't say, I traveled 10 miles in 2 hours. We usually say something like, I was going 10 miles per hour. Well, per sounds like division. So 10 miles per 2 hours. 10 miles per 2 hours. You never say, I'm traveling 10 miles per 2 hours. You would say I'm traveling so many miles per hour. So let's just look at this little piece right here. That's a fraction, and normally we wouldn't write fractions like that. My habit and your habit too should be that when you have 10 over 2, you reduce that. So really this fraction is the same as 5 miles per 1 hour. And we don't even need to write the 1 there. We can just write 5 miles over hour. 5 miles per hour. Now we have what sounds like a speed. So let's define speed. How did we get here? Well, I said, it's just taking distance and putting it over time. So speed is distance over time. That's a pretty good definition. It makes perfect sense. I have a problem with it though. I'm extraordinarily lazy. It took me a while to write that. There's all kinds of letters on the board. How can we make this simpler to work with and take up less of my time? Well, let's start at the beginning. Speed. There's 2 E's in there. That's kind of ridiculous. Why can't we just have 1? We have a P and a D, which are basically the same letter but flipped around. That seems like a waste. Why don't we just compress speed down to a single letter S? Whenever we see S from now on, that means speed. We don't have a lot of S words in science, so that'll do fine for us. How about this word is? It's short, but there's a dot, there's a squiggly line. You can tell by looking at my S's that they're never the same shape twice. Something easier for me would help out. How about this? Equal sign. You know, equals is, in the language of math, the same thing as is in the language of English. And we're going to be speaking the language of math a lot in physics. Now we have distance over time. In distance, 2 syllables, long word. Let's do the same thing we did here, replace it with the letter D. And over, that means divide in math, so if we just put it literally over time and call time t, this is what we call a formula in physics. And all it is a sentence. It's just a sentence. Speed is distance over time. That's something you already really knew. We didn't teach you anything. You knew this already. This sentence makes sense to you. That's something you could have done on your own. So all we did was compress that down to a formula. But now we have this nice compact formula that we can use anytime we want to talk about speed. In this formula, each of these letters is what we call a variable. We expect to replace it with a number. So if we started here and then I gave you this situation and said how fast is the block moving, we wouldn't have had to spend all this time thinking. We would have just said, oh, I know speed is distance over time, so if I'm looking for speed, all I need to know is distance and time. And in this case, the distance was 10 miles, the time was 5 hours. I can reduce that, so I get 5 miles over an hour. The speed's 5 miles an hour. That's it. Easy peasy. So I hope this first video is helpful, and if it was, let me know, and I'll be sure to make more of them. Bye now.